Welcome to the 2020 Columbia School of Social Work People of Color graduation. My name is Shireen Azadi Khan, and I'm a co-leader of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus.
My name is Natalia Dellery, and I'm a co-leader of the Black Caucus.
My name is Lorenzo Shaw Graham, and I'm a co-leader of the Black Caucus.
My name is Gypsy Castellanos, and I'm a co-leader of the Latinx Caucus.
My name is Emily Guzman, and I'm a co-leader of the Latinx Caucus. And we are the POC Graduation Core Committee. We as students began to plan the celebration in December and continued to meet during these unanticipated circumstances. It has been our pleasure hearing students' requests and working to bring this year's graduation to despite the current circumstances.
This is the second year in CSSW history that API, Black, and Latinx caucuses have worked together to unite our communities in celebration and honor of our achievements and cultures through POC graduation. We thank you for joining us from around the world in commemorating this momentous occasion from which students from historically marginalized backgrounds and communities will go on to empower themselves and become leaders in social change making.
Before we begin our program, we would like to first extend our thanks to all of those who made this event possible. We would like to give a huge thank you to Anna Angelis, Sheku Kamara, Kavi Fazio, Xavier Velasquez, and Betty G for all their support in helping us to plan, stay on track, and distribute communications throughout the semester. We would not have been able to do this without their help. To Karma Lowe, our Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Christopher Wan, the Program Coordinator in the DI office, thank you for supporting us throughout our time here at CSSW. Throughout this event, we will strongly encourage all graduating students to use Zoom backgrounds generously created for us by the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We will include the link to these backgrounds in the chat. We will also like to extend a warm welcome to CSSW Dean Melissa Begg, who has joined us today to celebrate the rich diversity and accomplishments of our CSSW POC community.
We would also like to thank all of our faculty and staff who are joining us today. Thank you so much for teaching us valuable lessons that we can use in the field and in our personal lives. To all of our peers and families and friends that are joining us, thank you. This milestone would not have been possible without your love and support. We also want to acknowledge those who are not with us today, those that our communities have lost and those that have led us here but may not have been here to join us. We want to take a moment to acknowledge Susan Chong, a beloved member of our community who passed away earlier this year due to complications related to COVID-19. And for those among us who have recently experienced loss and suffering due to the impacts of COVID-19, please join us for a moment of silence.
Through challenging times, the students in this room have overcome tremendous obstacles, both recent and generational, in order to be here. Now we would like to celebrate them for their accomplishments despite the many odds against them. Today, we will be hearing from student representatives of our respective communities, API Caucus, Black Caucus, and the Latinx Caucus. But first, we will hear a few words from the Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Karma Lowe. Karma Lowe is Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Columbia School of Social Work. She has held that position since May 2018 and officially opened the school's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion this academic year. After transitioning out of her prior position of Director of the Offices of Enrollment, Student Services, and Financial Aid at the school, she has more than 16 years of experience in higher education. And prior to joining the Columbia School of Social Work, she was an award-winning newspaper journalist in Southeast Texas.
Thanks, Gypsy, and good evening, everyone. So I need to apologize in advance if my voice cracks a little bit, because I've been getting emotional just watching everyone come on camera and seeing your faces and your families and your background. As Gypsy said, my name is Karma Lowe, and I'm the school's inaugural Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I want to give a quick shout out to our POC students, particularly those who are alums, whose activism really led to the creation of that office and that role. As Gypsy also said, I worked at the school for quite some time, and it's one of the many reasons why tonight's ceremony really is so special to me. I was deeply honored when the POC graduation committee asked me to say a few words at the second annual POC celebration. And since tonight is about celebrating our students, I won't talk too long, as I want to ensure that our focus really is on you, the 2020 graduates of the Columbia School of Social Work. Class of 2020, you are graduating during an unprecedented time, and one in which social workers are needed more than ever. As we continue to see a light shine on the social, economic, and health disparities that are disproportionately impacting communities of color and Indigenous peoples, I am filled with such hope as I think of how you, as people of color, will continue to support and serve such communities as professional social workers. This past year, more than ever, we've been able to bear witness to your individual and collective strength, resiliency, and determination. And it's for those reasons that I am confident that not only will you be okay, but that our local, national, and global communities will be all the better because of you. You are survivors, you are creators, you are counselors, you are advocates, you are activists, and you are leaders. And you are surrounded by so many people who love, support, and honor you, and I am proud to be among that group. This evening, as you celebrate this milestone achievement, I want to share with you two things that have inspired me for many, many years, and that I hope will inspire you as well. So the first is the poem Invictus, which may be familiar to some of you, particularly those who are members of fraternities or sororities. Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied, yet unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gates, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And the second and final piece I want to share is a proverb that I learned while working with organizers in Southeast Texas on the border. It's guided me through some of the most turbulent of times. Quisieron enterrarnos, pero no sabían que éramos semillas, which means they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. POC graduating class of 2020, continue to plant yourself wherever you see you are most needed. Continue to stand firm in your resiliency and continue to grow into formidable social work professionals, educators, and co-conspirators. Besos y abrazos. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Lowe, for your words. Next, we will hear from Asian Pacific Islander Caucus's student speaker, Shinjini Bakshi. Shinjini Bakshi, pronouns she, they, is a bilingual South Asian American clinical social worker, community advocate, and musician. Shinjini works at the intersections of adolescent mental health, activism, burnout prevention, post-traumatic growth, and organizational equity work. Their work is grounded in anti-oppressive practices with an emphasis on identity issues around race, gender, sexuality, body image, and the immigrant experience. In their free time, they enjoy engaging in the sounds of the diaspora, creating outsider art, and exploring new trails in the Pacific Northwest. Please give a warm welcome to Shinjini Bakshi. Columbia University School of Social Work, Class of 2020. Today, we get to tell the story, and our stories of resilience are worth pausing to celebrate. There is Indigenous, ancestral, and collective wisdom in our experience as students of color. Let us recognize that our ancestors have not only preserved our communities and native tongues, but have also taken care of the land from time immemorial. As we take a gentle inventory of our lives, we're reminded of what a privilege it is to be alive, to feel this tender, messy, heartbreaking, and precious present moment in history. Class of 2020, our character and endurance has been shaped by unspeakable hardships and remarkable triumphs. We have had to put our armor down to challenge the dominant discourse, deconstruct and expand our worldviews for every single matrix of oppression. Simply put, we have resisted the temptation to become palatable to whiteness. As Indigenous, Black, Latinx, Asian, and Pacific Islander students of color, our collective resistance is and always has been a form of activism. Within this prestigious Ivy League institution, we have championed social justice and human rights movements while also utilizing bold direct action to yield curriculum change that avoids exclusion of our narratives. Together, we are building tables that are created for us, by us. As Asian and Pacific Islanders in particular, we have had to fight to become recognized, seen, and visible as people of color in this school and also in the dominant social discourse. API communities have withstood and survived erasure due to colonization, separation, partition, and even genocide. Despite some of our lost API histories, we have never forgotten our community cultural wealth as well as our rich traditions. Our impact as API social workers in this field is immeasurable as we continue to speak our collective truth. As API social work graduates, we have shown up as the scholars that we are because we belong and are needed in this historically white profession. As CSSW students of color, we have sometimes wept over reading literature and engaging in the work because it is not just theoretical for us. We have inherited legacies of racism and colonization, and we know exactly what it feels like to be excluded, othered, and have to swallow microaggressions like shards of glass. Our stories do not need to be sanitized. We have had to carry things we often cannot see, such as navigating being first generation and international graduate students, losing community members to police brutality, and having to reclaim our intersectional identities. My own story includes learning how to navigate life in the South Asian diaspora and intimately understanding what it means to be both a consumer and provider of mental health care after stumbling through recovery. Within my story, another one is nested. I imagine 1946, a year before the partition of India. My grandmother hid underwater in a pond using a single lotus stem to breathe out of in an attempt to escape from religious-based oppression and violence. In a society that wants to devalue our bodies, we run with Ahmad as if he were our closest, dearest friend. We interrupt xenophobic hate crimes against our most beloved Asian classmates. We speak out against Islamophobia, stand up for missing and murdered Indigenous women, and advocate for undocumented immigrants. Our communities deserve transformative justice, culturally responsive and linguistically appropriate care, and safety and inclusion for my queer siblings. Class of 2020, our excellence should never be overlooked.
Social workers are essential workers, and our expertise will steer what the post-pandemic world will look like. Our incredible education, softness, and compassion have prepared us to face the collective grief in our nation and the mass death in some of our ancestral homelands. There are, of course, proud moments in which our brilliant insight has shaped policies, influenced clinical decisions, and fundamentally transformed organizations. As we celebrate the many, many wins, we also take on the urgent challenges of the field, building scientific knowledge through new research on evidence-based policy and practice, and believing in the capacity for change. There are other moments that do not get talked about. When CSSW students of color have worked tirelessly to change the mechanisms of higher education. We have addressed ableism, elitism, and gatekeeping in the ivory tower of academia. We have seen sometimes and experienced being stripped of dignity and harassed for speaking out against oppression at the organizational and institutional levels. We know that white supremacy gets perpetuated every single time there are attempts to silence us and our work. But let's remember that we are not immune to acting in oppressive ways, and it is crucial for us to build cross-racial and interracial coalitions of color so that we can consistently confront the historical fractures that exist in our circles through solidarity. We must actively challenge anti-Blackness, racial hierarchy, colorism, and the model minority myth, which all exist to cause further separation between us. Accountability and sensitivity are the gifts of this field. As Columbia University alumni, let us turn around and ask our future CSSW colleagues of color, what do you see that I don't see? With acute self-awareness, we must continue to leverage our position of great power as professionals. We will remain critical of the research, policy, theory, and ethics of this field because we are much more than our student loans. We are now being asked as social workers of color to examine what it means to live in this skin, to reimagine the world and be unapologetic in our pursuit for justice. This work is ongoing, collaborative, and there is no one true point of arrival. But today, we get to pause. We get to do a power pose and thank our friends and chosen family for holding space for us to grow. We thank our exceptional faculty members, kind advisors, and inspiring mentors for reminding us that the responsibility to carry all of the burden of change should not be on our shoulders alone. Together, we proudly plant the seeds of change, and we invest in our collective liberation. We will change the landscape of inequity. Fellow classmates, we are this world's brave, innovative, and empathetic leaders who will go on to be social policy experts, clinical supervisors, social entrepreneurs, and executive directors. Class of 2020, breathe, rest, stumble, but keep your heart open. You are deeply loved just as you are. Tender, messy, and precious. Congratulations.
Thank you, Shinjini, for sharing your talents and your words. Next, I am honored to introduce my best friend and our Black Caucus student speaker, Tariro. Tariro Nusanov is a Zimbabwean immigrant who has been involved in the social justice and education sectors for over a decade. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Psychology at Washington University in St. Louis. This coming fall, Tariro will be starting a PhD program in educational psychology at the University of Southern California Rosier School of Education. Her research interests lie in social cognition and critical consciousness in terms of racial identity development in the digital age. While at Columbia, Tariro was the recipient of the 2019 Diana Liss Cullen Memorial Scholarship Award an associate editor on the Columbia School Social Work Review, and a research fellow in the Cogburn Research Group and the Social Intervention Group. Tariro spends her free time reading, cooking, and designing her dream house on Pinterest.
Thanks, Natalia. Dear Columbia POC graduating class of 2020, what a strange and humbling time to be alive. It seems as though it was only yesterday that we all met for the first time, eyes wide, and all of us tingling with a mixture of anxiety and passion. All of us came from far and wide, not all by distance, but most definitely by experiences. Like some of you here, I come from a variety of worlds, the worlds of those that have crossed borders in search of safety and education, the worlds of those that have suffered from religious and racial persecution, the worlds of those that fought for the right to love whomever they want to love and to be whomever they want to be, the worlds of those that know there is joy in being Black and brown and every intersection in between, no matter how many times they try to write us out. Here we are, graduating in the midst of a global pandemic that has uprooted our lives in ways that we could have never imagined. This pandemic has brought with it public health crises, global economic upheaval, and widespread uncertainty. A global pandemic that has taken one of our own here at the School of Social Work and thousands of Black and brown folk all across the globe. May all of their memories be a blessing. 2 years ago, I found myself alone on a plane to New York City. I chose to come to Columbia because I had reached a point in my life where I wanted to actively pursue justice. So I went to the field office. My first year field placement was at the Cogburn Research Group. At that time, we were working on a 1,000-cut journey, a virtual reality simulation where participants embody a Black male named Mike. This was a completely new arena for me. I remember the very first time I went through the simulation and the tears that followed after. There was a scene in which Mike is stopped by the police on his way to a basketball game. I was harassed into dropping to my knees and putting my hands up. I felt things that were so real and yet so unfamiliar. I better understood what my human behavior in the social environment, also known as Hub C professor, was teaching us then. To interrogate everything, whilst being honest with ourselves and each other, to wrestle with the beliefs that we had by unpacking them, even if we landed where we had begun. To me, this was the true definition of justice. Justice in the form of critical action, critical thoughts, and critical being. We must put this achievement in the larger context of where we are in this world. It is important to remember that the power and presence of Columbia University has never and will never be enough to insulate us from white supremacy and anti-Blackness. However, the field of social work at its best is a field of solidarity. Reaching true solidarity requires a process of interrogation, the process of unpacking, restructuring, and rewiring under the broader concept of decolonization. Reaching true solidarity is also continuum work, one that should prioritize healing justice, healing of ourselves, and healing of our communities. Even though the acute threat of COVID-19 will pass, things will continue to be different. Today, I'm confident that this class of 2020 will be able to go forth into this world responsibly. As the late Toni Morrison said, the function of education must produce humane human beings. It must refuse to continue to produce generation after generation of people trained to make expedient decisions rather than humane ones. So here we all are at the end of this journey, which is truly just the beginning. We must reflect on the lessons we learned at Columbia, and equally as important, we must remain essential to each other. In my own experience here at CSSW, all of my Black joy came from being surrounded, seen, heard, and celebrated by you all. Here's the nights and lunch periods spent socializing and studying in the second floor lounge. Here's to those quick hellos and "I'm running late to class" shouted in the first floor lobby. Here's to those expensive and unnecessary apple tree snack runs. Here's to advocating for ourselves, each other, and the world. Together, we are capable of marching on and imagining transformative change for ourselves and future generations. A huge thank you to the professors, staff, and administration that supported us specifically. You served as mentors and advocated for us and fought for our right to be here. We wouldn't be here without you. Congratulations to Columbia School of Social Work POC class of 2020. It has been a pleasure learning and laughing by your side.
Thank you, Tori, for those thoughtful words and sharing your experience with our graduating class. Next, we will hear from our Latinx student speaker, Diana Ballesteros, pronouns she, they, is a first-generation New Yorker, daughter of Colombian immigrants. They are a poet and artist whose interests lie in issues of abolition, urban education, community and generational healing, and anti-racist, anti-oppressist praxis.
Thank you. Good evening to the class of 2020, to our faculty and staff, to our friends and family near and far. I am so grateful to be able to share space with all of you tonight. I'm so deeply appreciative. And it's such a surreal time to be addressing all of you, my classmates, in the midst of everything that's happening. And as I sat here trying to figure out the perfect words to inspire and uplift you, to fill you with joy and laughter and nostalgia, I found myself falling back on tired metaphors. And you, class of 2020, deserve so much better than that. So for tonight, I decided to stick with honesty. And honestly, this is a scary moment. These are unprecedented times. I've been told that the students of color at universities like this one are resilient. Resilient, like that's some kind of curiosity, something to be researched and quantified. Resilient, as if our desire to live, to learn, to grow, to be happy isn't something that naturally lives inside of all of us. What I believe in these days is what I can see with my own eyes. That is to say that I believe in each of you. And maybe that's part of the reason that we're here. We don't have the privilege of stepping into these spaces simply to self-actualize. We're here because we need to assert our humanity and to dismantle the systems that oppress us. As students of color at universities like this one, we've always understood the absurdity of gradualism, haven't we? Always working towards creating a better future that we might not witness ourselves. But we dare to take on the challenge, don't we? Always working towards that better future, knowing that this moment is the most fragile, precious gift that we have. All we have is now. So what can we say about this particular moment when a virus ravages our bodies and our communities, making a mockery of the systems born of capitalism, revealing over and over and over again the injustices that have built our current realities? And somehow you, in the midst of all of this, my classmates, are still finding ways to connect, to create, to speak out, to dream. The duality of this moment is the thing that surprised me the most. I find myself and the people around me constantly vacillating between fear and hope, anger and deep gratitude, anxiety and inspiration. Our ability to hold and honor these complexities are deepening our bonds and purpose. I can't make you promises for tomorrow, but I can say this. We, the students of color, the immigrant students, the first generation students, the Black, Brown, Indigenous, Asian, Latinx students have arrived to this moment. We bring with us long lines of ancestors who were committed to existing. Our presence is our gift to this university, to the city of New York, to our future workplaces, and to the world. Congratulations today and every day for every moment you arrive. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that beautiful and empowering speech, Diana. Next, we are grateful and excited to introduce our keynote speaker for the evening, Dr. Zuleika Henderson. Dr. Zuleika Henderson is a lecturer at the Columbia University School of Social Work. She is a licensed social worker from Brooklyn whose practice experience includes delivering school and community-based mental health services using African-centered wellness models. Grounded in the theories of historical trauma and post-traumatic slave syndrome, her research coalesces around trauma, mental health, and the conceptualizations of healing for Black people across generations. Her most recent research took a qualitative approach to examining how Black teens define trauma and healing. Currently, Dr. Henderson's focus is on translating African-centered conceptualizations of wellness into community-based mental health spaces for Black people who do not see traditional clinical services as an option for healing. Before coming to Columbia in 2017, Dr. Henderson was an assistant professor at the Social Work School at Bowie State University in Bowie, Maryland. Her BA is in sociology from Wesleyan University, her MSW from Fordham University, and her PhD from the illustrious Howard University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Zuleika Henderson.
Dear ancestors, please get well soon. In my silent thoughts, I hear the distant wailing of your cries. In my body, I feel the burden of your tears. I, too, would never have wanted to be ripped away from home. Although centuries have gone, our spirits still harmonize in hurt. We nurture our babies with those same wounds. This trauma reverberates across generations, and the legacy of that pain persists. It often feels as though our souls have died. Sometimes I wish I could have bottled the antidote for that kind of agony, secretly sent the cure back in time over those Atlantic shores so that my mama would not have inherited the remnants of that anguish. And none of us kids would have had to watch this cycle of internalized terror with our own eyes. I wish I could have equipped you to tend to your wounds so that today I would know how to deal with mine. But you fought hard to protect us, persevered under conditions I never could have imagined to endure. Because of that, we survived. And now I bear the responsibility. From the injuries of that horrific past, I must help us all heal. So I sat down to pen this letter, to summon a retroactive prayer for your spirits to get better, that our future might be well. With love, your great-great-great-great-granddaughter. I wrote this poem in 2014 to capture my thoughts on intergenerational healing. I share it now because when I started thinking about what to say, I felt the nudge to just begin by telling my social work story. As a young girl, I was a people watcher. Over time, I grew attuned to the feelings of those around me. I could tell when anyone was sad, and I became progressively sensitive to people who seemed like they were emotionally suffering. Later, I would happen upon social work because I saw this suffering tragically play out in the life of a 6-year-old boy at the after-school program where I worked. But more personally, I pursued this calling because I had grown up feeling like trauma was haunting my home and holding individual members of my family hostage. At first, just like most fresh out of college kids, I tried to find solutions and asked myself, what can I do to make a difference in what I was seeing? However, soon I learned that I had to begin by asking a totally different question. Not what could I do, but what is at stake for me? You see, when you have something at stake, you tend to put much more skin in the game. For me, beyond finding a job, this question positioned me to think about intentionally fulfilling on a personal mission. I knew that our ancestors' full story was not a narrative of sickness and pain, but there was something about being gifted with the specific sensitivities that I had that connected me to the mission of interrupting intergenerational wounding. For me, what was at stake was that unhealed wounds would continue to wage war on some of our families and communities, but good thing our ancestors left original instructions on how to be warriors. Getting clear about what was at stake led me to work with Black teens and families, to conduct research on how Black youth conceptualize healing, to teach so I could help nurture the professionals who would be on the front lines in our communities, and most recently, to dig into archival research to explore ways in which our ancestors cultivated and activated healing on their own terms. This latter work reminded me that healing is indeed our birthright, and that more of us just need to know that healing is an option. Today, instead of thinking about what I will do as a social worker, I think instead about who I am to this work. What I now affirm is that I am the possibility that all people of African ancestry will know that there are sacred spaces for us to put, process, and transform our pain in service of personal and collective freedom. My mission around healing shall create a balm that will transcend time and space and be able to reach back to solve any of our great-great-great-grandmother's remnant wounds. And oh, how proud all of our ancestors are today. Witnessing this collective offering of love and brilliance, this is a realization of the fruit of their efforts. Our celebration and accomplishments happen on the roads that they paved for our survival. May we never forget. I virtually stand here beyond proud of every single one of you. Grateful that we all get to have missions and that we are likely to see ourselves having different things at stake. So our life works will cover vast territories. I am inspired because I know for sure that the possibilities that you will or have been establishing for yourselves are more powerful than the havoc of any pandemic, any historical trauma, and any future threat to the well-being of our people or the people of this world. May those possibilities govern how you rise each day. May they guide your steps as you take seats in organizations and roles of leadership, as you design and lead new endeavors, and as you carry the torch in the range of capacities you choose. But please, just make sure that your critical self-reflection game is strong. There is nothing worse than a snot-nosed, freshly licensed social worker who is ready to march into communities to save the world, but hasn't first checked under their own shoes to make sure they're not tracking their personal dirt into someone else's home. So do your work, always. Keep accountability partners on deck. Design your own professional toolkit and fill it with the things that you've learned and committed to carrying with you. Those things that will be non-negotiables for your professional behavior, even in the absence of any ethical code, and even if no one else is watching or following suit, be in integrity with yourself. Leave room for growth, and be sure to make space for your humanity. Today, I don't just celebrate your resilience, I salute your excellence. May we use this moment of physical distancing as time for deep gratitude, introspection, and preparation. May we continue to gather as communities of color and offer up beautiful moments like this as a collective celebration of our unique and intersecting journeys, and as a collective offering to all of our ancestors. May we follow in their footsteps and roll up our sleeves to get to work for our successors. May who we are and what we do with the blessings and privileges that we have because of their investments and sacrifices make them sing so proud. I, Dr. Zuleika Ruglo Clinton Henderson, am the possibility that all people of African ancestry will know that there are sacred spaces for us to put, process, and transform our pain in service of personal and collective freedom. To the class of 2020, I challenge you to go within. Get clear about what's at stake for you. Define your own possibilities, and then let's get it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson, and thank you to all of our speakers. We're leaving more empowered and uplifted because of your messages today, and we will carry your words with us as we go. As we come to a close of this event and our time at CSSW, we would like to congratulate all of our graduates. We have tremendous hope and faith in the positive impacts that you will make and the honor and light that you continue to bring to our communities.
As we venture into the world, we know that we have each other to lean on and rely on through this common thread of our experience at CSSW. As we continue to become more unapologetically ourselves in the coming years, let us find strength in our multifaceted and multidimensional identities, those of complex and intricate intersections that make us exactly who we are and have influenced who we are yet to become.